We are first introduced to Darius, a pessimistic woman who'd been socially awkward for almost all of her whole life. She's in a job interview trying to convince the restaurant manager to hire her to work in the restaurant, so she makes no effort to impress the manager, and she reveals that she's attending the interview only because she's doing an internship that does not have pay, and she somehow needs to make money one way or another. The manager was not that impressed with her response, so he tells her that she's not really the right fit for the job, and he sends her home. In our next scene, we see Darius entering the publishing company where she works in, and her boss Bridget seems to talk to her with no respect at all. And in a meeting, Bridget asks for ideas to be published in the next magazine. After a moment of silence, Jeff mentions an ad that's recently been emailed. This ad was written by an anonymous person looking for some partner. The person who wrote this ad wants a person to travel back in time with them, and they indicate that anybody who agrees to accompany them cannot expect assured safety, but they will receive payment upon returning to the present time frame. Jeff here asks for interns to assist him when he's allowed to do the story, and Darius, Aranu, and a third intern raise their hands, excited to get picked, and Jeff chooses Darius and Aranu cause they're both so cute, and he begins his work. He decides to take the team to the town Ocean View, the place where the mail has been sent from, to locate the person who wrote it and interview them. Unenthusiastic about all this, Darius tells her father that she'll be leaving town for a couple of days, and her dad thinks that this would benefit her cause she's a bit of a loner, and he assumes that she's some kind of antisocial virgin. As they await Jeff's arrival the next morning, Darius and Aranu find themselves delving into a discussion on the topic of time travel. Darius asks Aranu what period he would travel to which he replies by saying that he would just stay in the present, as Darius is an enlightened person. But Darius disagrees, saying that everything cool has disappeared in time, insinuating that the past was somehow better. This work trip that Jeff presumes is a vacation starts when they go to the Ocean View and are given one motel room with 2 beds for all 3 of them. Darius and Aranu try to locate the person using the P.O. box that's been left on the ad, and after finally finding the guy, Darius follows him and discovers the location of his house, the supermarket that he works in, and his name, which is Kenneth Calloway. Meanwhile, Jeff and Aranu are stalking Liz, a blonde woman Jeff used to date when he was in high school, on Facebook. When Darius comes to report all the progress that she's made, they find that all that she's achieved was having a friend request accepted by Liz. The next morning, Jeff drives to Kenneth's house and approaches him pretending like he's answering his ad. Kenneth asks Jeff why he wants to go back in time, and Jeff tells him that it's a great opportunity anybody would want to come across, cause in all honesty, it kind of is. But Kenneth was suspicious, and he refuses to continue talking to him and tells him to leave. Jeff leaves and tells Darius to go talk to Kenneth to see if she can convince Kenneth cause Jeff couldn't. She then goes to the supermarket where he works in and asks if he sells guns. When he asks her what she intends to do with it, she tells him that she's uncertain because he didn't make that clear on his ad. Surprised and offended by Darius's comment, Kenneth defends his ad, and Darius impulsively convinces him to talk to her after his shift was over, and she waits for him outside. After he gets off work, he enters his car and Darius follows him to what is assumed to be a safe place to talk. Since Darius wasn't alone, she had trouble hiding her colleagues from Kenneth when he stops his car and approaches her, but before he could get to her, she yells that she's being followed and drives away. Kenneth, assuming that she was telling the truth, pulls out a rifle from his car to scare the oblivious person passing by, and Darius stops again and tells both Jeff and Aranu to get out of the car before Kenneth catches up. As they argue, Kenneth calls Darius and tells her that he will contact her after he does a background research and makes sure that she isn't one of the people that are coming after him. In the morning, Jeff decides to visit the hair salon Liz works in, and after checking whether she was there or not, he catches a glimpse of a beautiful blonde and smiles. Jeff thinks that he's finally found the woman that he couldn't stop thinking of, but the girl leaves and he sees a middle-aged woman with red hair. Jeff's excitement disappears when he unfortunately finds out that the young and hot blonde wasn't her, and Liz was now a middle-aged woman who dyed her hair red. Later that night, the 3 colleagues discuss Jeff's incident as well as whether Kenneth is going to call Darius or not. The next morning, Kenneth takes Darius to a high school football match to avoid attention from whoever's following him, and as they were talking about the mission, Darius asks what the transport medium is to get some information from him, but Kenneth tells her that he's not actually sure about working with her yet. Meanwhile, Jeff and Aranu were in other seats waiting for Darius. Jeff starts to carelessly drink until security spots him, and this catches Kenneth's attention and he recognizes Jeff. Darius, trying to avoid blowing her cover, tells Kenneth that she thinks their conversation is being recorded and they go out. He then agrees that he will train her to go with him and leaves. Later that day, Darius and Kenneth start training. Kenneth teaches Darius how to shoot, and she starts to slowly shift her focus away from the story and begins to relish in Kenneth's company. On their break, Kenneth asks Darius why she wants to go back in time. She tries to make it seem like a secret, but when Kenneth begins to doubt their progress, she makes up a story about how some guy took her mom from a gas station and killed her. She then feels guilty and tells him what actually happened, and she tells him that she died in a car accident after she stopped to get her chocolate milk. Darius seemed to believe that it was her fault. Kenneth assures her that she isn't to blame and finally decides to take her back in time with him. In the next scene, we see Jeff working up the courage to see Liz. He knocks on her door and she seems delighted to see him, and she invites him in with a smile and they start to catch up. And unlike his expectations, he starts to enjoy her company. In the meantime, Darius is recording an interview of Kenneth talking about the things that are happening before the time travel. Kenneth, whom I will be referring to as Ken from now on, says that the mission is about regret, mistakes, and love. After the interview, Ken tells Darius one of the rules that he set out for the mission. He states that no matter how tempting it may be, they are not allowed to abuse the power that comes with their knowledge of the future. During this conversation, Darius notices Ken's ear almost falling out. She tries to tell him about it, but Ken becomes furious, slams the table, and tells Darius that the mission is off and runs to his car. She then follows him, and embarrassed, Ken tells her that his ear is a prosthetic and that before he had it, kids used to make fun of him when he was at school. She expresses sympathy and makes him feel comfortable by telling him that she also relates to his experience because she also used to be made fun of in school. Ken then reconsiders his decision and agrees to resume what they started. While Darius and Aranu were having a conversation in the motel, Jeff enters the room very excited. Darius, like me, assumed that he slept with Liz and that's why he was so excited, but that's not actually what happened. Jeff says that they only talked and that he takes back everything horrible that he said about Liz. At night, Darius and Ken drive to a technological institute to steal a device that's required to complete making the time machine. Ken tells Darius to wait for him in the car and infiltrates the building. When he leaves the car, Darius starts to question what she's being associated with, and Ken steals the device and they escape. When they drive back, they come across some men on the road and hide to avoid being witnessed. This frustrates Ken, and when Darius tries to calm him down, he starts telling her why he plans to go back in time. Apparently, his girlfriend has been killed in an accident when a drunk guy crashed his fan into her living room, and Ken is traveling back in time to save her. After Darius informs Jeff and Aranu about this, they decide to investigate what he's making and go to his house. When they get there, they see Kenneth leaving and two men in suits following him. Jeff considers that this will be interesting for the story and follows them, and after they lose Kenneth, Darius gets off the car and calls him. Genuinely worried, Darius checks if he is okay and they decide to meet later. After noticing this odd behavior, Jeff follows her out of the car and asks if she has feelings for Ken, but she denies it and heads to meet with him. After they meet, Darius is sent by Ken to deliver what is considered a lot of money to Ken's boss from the supermarket. His boss gratefully mentions that he needed it for his wife, and he tells Darius to inform Ken that he wishes him success in what he's doing, and she leaves impressed by Ken's kindness. Meanwhile, Jeff asks his boss for more time. He claims that he needs a couple more days to work, even though he just needs more time with Liz. He then ends up sleeping with her, finally, and he gets too invested that he asks her to come to Seattle to move in with him. But she tells him that he isn't in the right mind and refuses. Jeff is aggravated by this and they argue and leaves after pointing out that it was all a mistake. Trying to escape the heartbreak, Jeff convinces Aranu to go out with him. They then meet a couple of girls when they walk out of the supermarket after buying some liquor. They spend some time having fun and go back to the motel, and Aranu, who was nervous at first, is encouraged by Jeff to sleep with one of the women who'd come back to the motel with them. That night, Ken and Darius camp outside and talk about the map they intend to use, and Darius finds Ken's musical instrument similar to a guitar. He tells her that he wrote a song for his dead girlfriend and he plays it for her, and she then kisses him and they spend the night together. The next morning, the girls that were in the motel leave and Darius comes back. Jeff gets a phone call and is told that Ken's supposedly dead girlfriend Belinda is not actually dead. When Darius finds out about this, she goes to Belinda's house to interview her, and during this interview, Darius finds out the shocking truth when Belinda tells her that they were never in a relationship with Ken. Darius, who's secretly worried about their connection, asks her if she's still still talks to Ken, and Belinda proceeds to tell her about what happened. She mentions the accident and explains how it wasn't a stranger that ran his car into her living room but Kenneth. As Darius walks out after the interview, the two men that were following Ken from earlier approach her. They tell her that he's been suspected of being an agent due to his past criminal record for stealing a device from a lab, and he's also suspected for other crimes. Influenced by all this new information, Darius goes to his house to confront him, while Jeff and Aranu wait for her outside. When she tells him what she found out, he tries to explain it to her, but Darius gets pissed and starts yelling. He tells her all she needs to do to know he's telling the truth is to come to the launching site at the time that they agreed upon. Jeff and Aranu see the men that were following Ken and head to the house to go warn her. Ken recognizes Jeff and runs away, and the three of them continue the search and end up in his garage. They see the entire garage covered in blueprints of the machine he was trying to make and run after him. Darius gets to him before the others and sees him in a boat with the machine that he's made. She apologizes, and her colleagues who were followed by the men going after Ken find them. Darius admits that she only lied about her story, but explains that everything else was real. He gives her his hand and asks her to get on the boat, and she gets on the boat and flips the switch. When the machine starts running, they kiss, and finally, everybody, including me, that thought that Ken was crazy for thinking that he could time travel is proved wrong. The machine actually works, and they disappear into what seems like a small explosion. And that is how the movie ends. That is it for my recap. I hope you guys leave me a like. I hope you also leave me a comment and subscribe to my channel. I love you guys so much, and I promise to see you on my next recap. Bye.